The gods and the goddesses placed their arms on their heads. There was nights without days, and the sun disk became obscured, and the earth became inverted, so that the rivers were unnavigable. The cardinal's point fell into disorder, and every being in existence, whether man or God, cried. Osiris's body in pieces. Although there is no explicit reference in many mythological snippets to Seth hacking Osiris into many pieces, as recorded later times by Diodorus and Plato. In the pyramid text, there is mention of Horus collecting up pieces of Osiris, seemingly after Seth had dismembered him and thrown his remains into the Nile. I am Horus, the inscription reads. I have come for you that I might purify you, cleanse you, revive you, assemble for you your bones, collect for you your swimming parts, and assemble for you your dismembered parts. Additionally, some temples list parts of Osiris's body as being buried at different sacred sites. In particular, sometimes a piece is described as buried in some Egypt nomes, as buried in each of Egypt's nomes. A New Kingdom papyrus that records myth concerning Osiris and Seth similarly mentions Osiris's body as broken into pieces. In a later papyrus, Tefnut, Isis, and Nephnit finds the god's shoulder blades and tibia in a bush in Letopolis. Conceiving Horus. When Isis found the body of Horus, or had reconstructed it, she used her magic to restructure him long enough to become pregnant. How she restructured Osiris differs depending on the source. A big tradition at the Temple of Hathor and Dendra refers to Isis standing to the god's right and Thoth to his left. They place their hands on each part of Osiris's body, performing the opening of the mouth ceremony. In order to reinvigorate him, this ritual was practiced by Egyptian priests over a mummy to awaken the dead ready for their journey in the afterlife. Another tradition has Isis in the form of a kite, flapping her wings to provide Osiris with the breath of life. His sister was his guard. She who drives off the foes, who stops the deed of the disturber, Seth, by the power of her utterance, the clever tongue, whose speech fails not, effective in the word of command, mighty Isis, who protected her brother, who sought him without wearying, who roamed the land, lamenting, not resting till she found him, who made a shade with her plumage, created breath with her wings, who jubilated, joined her brother, raised the weary ones, inertness, received the seed, bore the hair, the great hymn to Osiris, steel of Amen-Mos. The moment of conception was marked by a flash of lightning, which caused the gods to be afraid. Knowing that Seth would seek out, Isis asked the god to protect her unborn child in her womb. But Atum demanded to know how she could be sure that the child was a god. The goddess remarked that she was Isis and that the child was the seed of Osiris. This simple statement convinced Atum, who decreed that Seth should stay away from the pregnant Isis, and that Wertaku, the great of magic, a snake goddess, would guard against him. Seth steals the body of Osiris from the Wabet. Even after the body of Osiris had been reconstructed, there remained the need to protect it from Seth. At first, we are told, nut, spread, At first we were told Nut spread herself over Osiris to conceal him from his enemy, and even later on, when Anubis was mummifying Osiris, mumming, the process of embalming, was one of the god's many duties. Seth continued to pose a great threat. One day when it was approaching twilight, Seth discovered the time that Anubis would leave Osiris' body alone in the Wabet, the place of embalming. To evade detection, the trickster god transformed himself into Anubis, and just as planned, the guards failed to recognize him. Snatching Osiris' body from within the wallet, he sailed away on the river, carrying the corpse westward. But Anubis soon learned what had transpired, and along with the gods of his entourage set off in pursuit. When they met Seth, took the form of a bull, intimidate the dog-faced god, but Anubis caught and tied Seth by the arms and legs and severed his phallus and testicles. His army defeated Anubis, placed Osiris' body on his back, ready to return him to the Wabet, and imprisoned Seth in a place of torture at Saka in the 17th Upper Egyptian Nome. On another occasion, Seth transformed into a great cat after again attacking the body of Osiris. But he was captured and branded. These marks created a leopard spots. Later, Seth again stole Osiris' body by transforming into Anubis. It was a good plan after all, worth trying more than once. As before, he was captured, but this time was sentenced to spend the rest of his life as a seat of Osiris. Seth, perhaps unwilling to spend eternity to support for a corpse buttlock, fled into the desert, pursued by Anubis and Thoth, who used his magic to fell him. Seth's arms and legs were bounded, and the gods decided to burn him, hoping to rid of him once and for all. hoping to be rid of him once and for all. The smell of burning fat reached the sky, and Re and the gods regarded it the odor of agreeable. Anubis then flayed Seth and wore his skin. In this macabre Seth suit, Anubis redenvist with his enemies, followers, mingling. They don't want me to read. Mingling with them on the mountainside until nightfall, when he put his violent plan into action. With a single swipe of his blade, Anubis severed his head, leaving the blood from their decapitated corpse to dribble across the mountainside. But Seth was not the only problem Anubis faced when mummifying Osiris. The process itself appears to have been too overwhelming for the god. One myth relates how the dog-faced god, distraught, transformed himself into a lizard and scurried out of the Wabbit to tell people of the horrors he had seen within, probably Osiris' lifeless body. Hearing his news, all the gods became upset and wept. Once Osiris, this is the funerary ceremonies of Osiris. Once Osiris has been properly mummified, Re commanded a funeral to be held for the fallen god. Anubis was to be preside over the funerary ceremonies, and Gept helped him to make the official arrangements. As the funerary procession sailed along the Nile, the mourners kept watch for the followers of Seth, and at one point were attacked by reptilian creatures that transformed into cattle. The funerary cortege successfully invaded them, however, and continued on to Abydos, where the funeral was held. Isis and Nephthys weeping throughout. Afterwards, festivities were held and the gods were pleased. To protect Osiris' body, Anubis surrounded the burial with snakes called the gods who guard Osiris. Osiris as king of the blessed dead. Although Isis' magic revived Osiris long enough for her to conceive a son, the murdered god was not fully returned to life in the world of the living. Instead, Osiris' resurrection was confined to Dot, where he ruled over the blessed dead as king. He was confined to this place and could only communicate with those in the living world through messengers. As the force of regeneration in the world, Osiris united in the ailing sun god in the middle of the world. Osiris united with the ailing sun in the middle of the night, filling him with enough energy to rise in the east each morning and to continue his circuit. He also presided over the judgment of the dead, watching as the heart of the deceased was weighed against the feather of Mayat. Woo, child. Sorry, this story is getting very real. The reign of King Seth and the triumph of Horus. With Osiris dead, Seth ascended the throne of Egypt. The length of his reign differs depending on the source of the Turan canon. Gives him at least 2 years, while Matthäus Egyptica, a polemic period position that now survives as experted, sometimes manipulated, quotations in later works give either 29 to 45 years. During this time, Seth flooded the land with his evil designs, aided by his followers in the towns and nomes where his cult was strongest, particularly the 19th nome of Upper Egypt and the 11th nome of Lower Egypt. Wow. The numbers are very symbolic. I'm feeling the energy. One of Seth's first acts as pharaoh was to imprison Isis and Nephthys in the spinning house of Sais. Isis' heart became burdened and her eyes sunken from crying. It is unclear how long this incarnation lasted, but it was at least several months, and Seth assigned her work every 30 days. Other myths relate that Seth locked Nephthys in his house, but she turned on him and escaped to assist Isis, leaving behind the son she had born to her murderous husband. The identity of the son of Seth is unclear, though it is possibly Maga, an aggressive crocodile who was said to have bitten off the left arm of Osiris's. Maga's violent act at his subsequent denial of having swollen the divine's arm led to his town being cursed and his tongue being cut out. Nephthys bore Seth's further children, but harbored sexual passion for Osiris. Perhaps one of the reasons Seth murdered his brother. For her betrayal, Nephthys lived in fear, and Seth might kill her in retribution. Nevertheless, she still protected Osiris' body while hiding from her husband. Horus' birth and youth. The birth of Horus in the papyrus thicket. O evildoer Seth, your crime is directed against you. Our Lord is in your house and shall not fear. The child is greater than you. He will live, and his father will live. Papyrus MM 35A. I am getting so much ringing in my ear. It's incredible. When she finally escaped the spinning house, the pregnant Isis went into hiding in the northeast delta at a place called Chemis. According to the Greek historian Herodotus, these words, Greek words, Maybe further down the line I will be able to pronounce them. Right now, they don't even want me reading this book, as this was a floating island at Puto. Through the remarks that it wasn't floating during his visit. After 10 months of pregnancy, Isis gave birth to Horus there. Unfortunately, Seth became aware of the birth because his bed shook at the moment of delivery, and he woke. Isis then raised Horus in solitude. Isis then raised Horus in solitude. His abound unknown in the Delta marches. As a youth, he was protected by Isis magic, and various goddesses acted as his nurse and servant, including Nephthys, Wadgat, and Nekhet. Hathor, as a divorced cow, served as Horus' wet nurse, as did Nephthys. Wow, I'm getting hot. Nephthys went in search of the young Horus. For many years, uprooting papyrus and burning the matches in his quest, but Isis took protective measures to ensure that the angered king could not find him. Gathering up Horus in her arms and moving on wherever she sensed Seth's destructive rage. On one occasion, Horus, a bedhead, who had sworn to protect Horus even before the child was born, arrived with his fleet to protect the child Horus and Isis from Seth and his followers. A great river battle ensued between the two forces, and Seth transformed into a hippopotamus. But Horus and Bat was ultimately victorious, but he turned into a strong young man armed with a harpoon that he used to spear his enemy. Okay. Illnesses and difficulties faced by Horus in his youth. Despite divine assistance, Horus and the child continued to encounter problems, troubled either by illness or dangerous creatures. For the wider contents of this myth, we see chapter 6. One problem he faced, however, is common to children and adults throughout the world even today: nightmares. Come to me, my mother Isis, he is recorded as saying, "Look, I see something which is far from me. In my own city," Isis replied. "Look, my son Horus, do come out with what you have seen, so that your dumbness finishes, so that your dreams, apparitions draw back. A fire will leap out against the thing that frightened you. Look, I have come to see you, that I may drive out your vexations, that I may annihilate and annihilate all ailments. Hail to you, good dream. May night be seen as day. May all bad ailments brought about by Seth, the son of Nut, be driven out. Victorious is Re over his enemies. Victorious I am over my enemies." I love it. Papyrus Chester Betty III. Physical pains also afflicted Horus. These were sometimes attributed to demons or worms. In several tales, we find that these pains were specifically stomach aches. After eating a golden abdu fish on the border of the pure pool of red, Horus' stomach was in such pain that he had to spend the day lying down. On other occasions, Isis brought an opiate measure to purge the pain from her son's belly. Pain sometimes entered Horus' body in the form of demons. When suckling from his mother, one such demon caused his heart to become weary and his lips livid. So Isis, Nephthys, and the weakened Horus went to visit men, maids, and nurses to learn what they had done in the past to cure their own children of similar possessions. At other times, the pain manifested in headaches. Look, she has come, Isis, there she has come, swaying her hair like a mourning woman. She's being of disordered appearance herself, like the hair of her son Horus, on account of smashing of his head, of the roughing of his side locks by Seth, the son of Nut, during the fight in the Great Valley. Papyrus Budapest, 1961. Horus also suffered from burns. Horus, the child, is the nest. A fire has fallen into his body. He does not know it, and vice versa. His mother is not present. Who might conjure him? The boy was small. The fire was powerful. There was no one who could save him from it. Isis came out of the spinning house at the hour when she loosened her thread. Come, my sister Nephthys, show me my, that I may do what I know to do, that I may extinguish it from him with my milk, with the solidarity liquids from between my breasts. It will be applied to your body so that your vessel becomes sound. I will make the fire recede that has attacked you. Papyrus British Museum, 159. 1. Horus' problem could be less dramatic too. One myth recounts he could cry out his fields because his cattle were being bothered by wild animals, including lions, jackals, and hyenas. Isis, the seventh scorpion. Lengthier myths concerning Horus youth follow similar themes to the most detailed, being the myth of Isis and the seven scorpions. In this myth, Isis escapes her prison, the spinning house of Sais, and is visited by Thoth, who warns her about Seth's plans to harm her child. He advises her to go hiding until Horus safely reaches adulthood and can challenge his evil uncle. Fully aware of Thoth's reputation for wisdom, Isis and Horus leave the evening leave that evening, carried within their palanquin and escorted by 7 scorpions, manifestations of scorpion goddess Serquet, for protection, 3 at the front of the palanquin, 2 within, and 2 at the rear. The scorpions are instructed not to speak with anyone, whether noble or peasant, and to keep their face down on the road lest a message reach Seth before they can arrive at the house of the crocodiles in the town of the 2 sisters on the edge of the delta. One day as they journeyed, Isis and Horus and the scorpions approached a number of houses owned by a wealthy married woman who spotted them from afar and ensured that all of her doors were closed. This annoyed the 7 scorpions, who decided to exact revenge. While Isis and the other scorpions rest in the home, a young peasant girl of the marches, the scorpion Tephan, his sting now armed with the combined poison of each of the 7 scorpions, scurried under the doorway of the rich woman's house and stung her son. It was as if a fire had broken out in her home, and the lady began to lament and mourn. She could not tell if her son were alive or dead, and wandered through the town crying, but no one came to her aid. Isis became worried about the child, as she regarded him as blameless in the rich woman's selfishness. She called to her, announcing that her mouth bears life, and explaining that she was well known in her town, but dispelling poisonous disease with her words of power. Within the rich woman's house, Isis placed her hand on the boy and uttered the name of each of the 7 scorpions in turn. By knowing their true names, Isis wielded power over them. She commanded their poison to leave the child, and he quickly became healthy again. She then chastised the scorpions, reminding them that they are forbidden to speak with anyone, and added that they must refrain from any discrediting their names in the district. She then told them to keep their heads down until they could reach their hiding place at Chemis. Witnessing these events, the wealthy woman saw the error of her ways and gave her possessions to Isis and the peasant girl. Horus is poisoned. With Horus safely hidden away in the matches at Chemis, Isis spent her days begging, gathering food to feed her child, and looking after his needs. One day, however, she returned to find the young god unconscious. Tears from her eyes and saliva from her lips had moistened the banks of the river. His body was limp, her heart was weak, and she was unable to breastfeed. The panic, Isis called out to the local villagers of the marshlands, imploring them to come to her aid, but none knew a spell to cure him. Then a woman came to help. a person of distinction in her district. She reminded Isis that Horus was safe from Seth in Kenmis, so the illness could not have been caused by him, and suggested that she investigates Horus for any signs of scorpion sting or snake bites. Leaning close to her child, Isis smelled the odor emanating from Horus' mouth and quickly realized what was wrong. Embracing Horus and crying, she screamed, "Horus has been bitten." "O Ray," her father cries, brought Nephis, and together they wept, the sound echoing throughout the marshes. Soon after, the goddess Sekret arrived, asking Isis what was wrong and advising her to call out to the sky to catch the attention of the sun Barket. "The crew of Ray will come to standstill," she said, "and the boat of Ray will not sail on as long as the boy Horus is lying on his side."